It's time.
As it's about to be Halloween, right? It's going to be all of the holiday seasons. And I just crashed everything in the holiday season. So it's always important. Everyone does a checkup, right? Whether we do our financial checkups, our health checkups, check up with our family, etc. But there's one that doesn't get talked about a lot. I know you talk about all the time, Griffin. But it's the estate side of things. With your estate plan, you're checking up on that. And it's very important to get that started in Q4. So let's dive right into that topic and kind of talk about exactly what we wanted to get through. And that is, why does your estate planning or succession planning, any of those things as business owners and individuals, always slip through the cracks and kind of be like the last thing that anyone thinks about in any given year?
I think mainly because it's the last thing you do want to think about, because death is the last thing on anybody's mind. We all know we're going to live forever, or at least in our mind, it's not something we're worried about at any given moment. There's much bigger fish to fry, so it's something that's usually not top of mind for the average person. And I think part of the problem with the estate planning industry is we've cast that reality in a light of shame. But if that's what describes you, you're actually in good company. I'm here to meet you where you are today. And yeah, I'm not thinking about it day to day, and I do this for a living. So I certainly don't expect you to be doing the same.
Do you find around this time that people ask more questions around their estate planning or succession planning as well, just because it is the holiday season, they're around their family more and they're trying to do planning for the next year?
Yeah, a little bit. There's often a saying that some of the best estate planning is done around the Thanksgiving table, or sometimes the worst estate planning is done there. But at the same time, more often, what I've seen in recent years is that tax law changes, or the threat of it, has driven a lot of urgency, where the concern isn't necessarily about the estate plan itself. It's, can we do some Band-Aid type of planning now to shore up some benefits we might lose at year end?
And what would you say to everyone listening right now going, well, shit, I haven't done my estate plan ever, or I haven't looked at it in 10 years. What do you say to them about like the importance of getting at least it checked up on around this time?
I think the biggest thing is defining what estate planning means. And everybody kind of thinks, okay, that question goes hand in hand with the bigger issues, which are important. Don't get me wrong, but do you have a will? Do you have maybe a revocable living trust? Have you done powers of attorney in a living will? And all of those are important documents. And if you haven't gotten them done, I'd encourage you to look into it. And I think I always like to tell people, perfect is the enemy of good. When you go through that process and get those vital documents done, it doesn't mean that's the end of the road. And the expectation is that your circumstances are going to change, your life is going to change, your family dynamics are going to change, and the people you name in those documents, your relationships with them and their own situations are going to change. So as much as we would love to say that we can set it and forget it, the reality is that even if you do the work now and get the vital documents in place, revisiting them is going to be very important. So I think the good news for those of you who haven't done it is that you're really no worse off than somebody who did it many, many, many years ago, and their situation is completely changed, and what they've done is no longer, suitable to their situation. And I think that's the bigger picture of why we're discussing this today, that as much as we would love to just think about death once and get it done, not have to worry about it again, we're still going to have to pull that up every once in a while. And that's a lot of the work I do, is kind of creating that habit of, on those rare occasions when you can kind of motivate yourself to, it's like pulling teeth. I don't want to do this, but I'll give it some attention now. What can we effectively do during those windows of time?
Yeah. And we'll dive into that deeper as we go. But let's get into segment 2, which is my favorite. And that's, we're talking about what society and media is saying. Maybe a little myth busting here as we go. So here's the first one. And it kind of alludes to what we were just talking about a little bit. But my will from years ago and is completely fine. I don't need to update anything.
I mean, I've seen wills of all shapes and forms, and some of them have pages missing, some of them haven't been executed correctly. And I think the big picture is, even if you have a will from years ago, you may not even know whether it was done correctly. It's a common outcome I see. And, again, if this is you, no shame, but oftentimes you might have an attorney or an online service prepare the document. Then it kind of comes home and lives in your drawer until you get around to saying, okay, I'm finally ready to sign this thing. Let's go get that done. Well, for a will, for example, you have to get it signed in front of at least two witnesses, usually, sometimes even a notary. And more often than not, it doesn't matter what's in the terms of that will. You could have done the best job in the world to think through and make this a meaningful document. But if you don't have nailed down those two witness signatures and possibly the notary signature, even that will you did many, many years ago may not be effective. So it's the small things like that that go into it. And like I said, you could have a will where your kids were, infants at the time, and you named guardians, and you have a comprehensive trust structure for them, and now they are adults, self-sufficient. They have their own kids you might want to provide for. Your dynamics have changed at that point, and the old will no longer really suits your situation.
Absolutely. This one's a fun one because everyone loves banks, and this is probably for the older generation because they just trust the bank with everything. But in the end all be all, here's the next one: the bank has my beneficiaries, so I'm covered. I don't need a will or estate stuff. They've got my beneficiaries.
Well, a couple issues with that. One, do you truly know that they have your beneficiaries? If you're used to working with bank personnel, you'll know how often they can make mistakes and how often you can tell them to do something and they never follow through on it. So you may think they have your beneficiaries, but without confirming that first and foremost, you don't necessarily know. And again, too, this becomes an issue where if they have your beneficiaries, maybe that's not the suitable recipient. I think sometimes there's a difference between picking and choosing different assets to give to people versus looking at your balance sheet as a whole and saying, okay, I want a certain dollar value or percent to go to these people. Well, the two concepts don't marry up well, especially when you start using beneficiary designations, and you're losing opportunities for a little more thoughtful planning around that and what that entails. So, they sound good on paper, but they're not always the best when working through the estate settlement process. Not to mention, whatever your bank has doesn't necessarily apply to all the other assets you have.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, what about your car or your other assets? That's not always going to be there at the bank. Just because you have it written down for this account does not automatically include everything else. As a former attorney yourself, how about this one? My attorney has it on file, so I don't need to keep copies myself.
Well, your attorney might have your documents on file, but do your loved ones know that the attorney has those documents on file? Do they know how to reach the attorney? And importantly, is the attorney even still practicing? There's all sorts of situations where recovering attorneys like me have left practice, and usually I make sure my clients have the original, because if I'm not there anymore, who are they going to call? Now, I have a firm behind me that they can call up, but there's lots of solo attorneys out there who have retired, and you have no idea what happened to your documents. They may have sent a letter, but may have gone to the wrong address or whatever. In some states, like here in Colorado, they've shorted up where when you're retiring, technically you can send a will to the Secretary of State and they store it and keep a record there. But if you don't know about that, access is a huge issue. So just because you think your attorney still has it doesn't mean they necessarily still do.
And this one's not on topic. Just my own question here is, how long do attorneys need to keep things like that? Like, how long is the record holding for a will or a trust or something like that?
I think it varies by state, and a lot of attorneys will say, okay, we'll store your documents, but every 7 years or 21 years or whatever, we're going to revisit this and reach out to you. And I think the issue is, if you've moved, the attorney can only send something to last known address. And I know, at least in Colorado, like I said, there's a backup procedure where if you're an attorney in that situation, I can't find my client, I can't get them their last will here, we'll send it to a Secretary of State or a court where, we last knew the client to live. And even then, courts are kind of getting overwhelmed by the amounts of wills, so they don't always take them anymore either.
Interesting. Yeah, I assumed it goes state by state. States like to argue those things. Yep. All right, last one in this segment. And this one is interesting because, and I'm going to prelude it with, I actually have told clients like, hey, we'll handle the buy sell at a different time. And it's just because of the information on hand, a lot of overwhelming moving parts. You just kind of have sometimes start the business. So whatever you're going to say, I'm also on the side that I've done this before. So this one is saying, we'll handle the buy sell later for our business. Let's just get going and operational. What do you say to that?
I mean, I think it's a good approach. There's only so much you can do at once, and I think the more you can give your attention right now, the better. But um, it's a double-edged sword, because if you decide to do a bunch of stuff now, your documents plus your buy sell, and you're willing to just skate through and say, okay, just check the default boxes on the buy sell just for the sake of getting a document done, it may not fit your situation. And buy sells are, for better or worse, a lot more complicated. There's a lot more choices that go into that than a lot of clients give credence to. So being thoughtful about that process, even if it means perhaps waiting until a later date, can sometimes create a better outcome. Now, note, I'm using terms like better and not best. In some situations, it's just hard to know. I mean, everybody is in a race against time. And I always cite, I forget which coach it was who said, we didn't lose, we just ran out of time. And that's really the outcome for most estate plans. It's just maximizing the time you have on this earth to get as much pre-planning as you can done. And, for better or worse, sometimes you just run out of time.
Let's couple that new segment being your point of view, where we get to dive into your brain even more so. And I want to hit upon the buy sell stuff too. As business owners, when we have partners, that's usually when the buy sell is coming into play the most. You said it's potentially more complex than your normal will and trust. Why is that? Why is there more complexity when it comes to a buy sell? Because mostly when everyone thinks of it, they're like, oh, if I die or get disabled, you give my family money and you get shares. Like, it's simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talk to you a little more of the complexities that go into them.
Yeah, and I think really the issue I see oftentimes is whether you even know you have a buy sell to begin with. There's different forms of entities, and especially if you go to an attorney and have them draft up like an LLC operating agreement or a partnership agreement, sometimes there will be buy sell language baked into that, and it'll be the defaults. And if you just received the document and said, oh, this looks good, and checked it off, and you and your business partner signed, then you may not even know what's in there. So that can come as a surprise to begin with. The other issues tend to be that, there's triggering events in a buy sell, and being thoughtful about those is important. You mentioned the death, disability, things of that nature, but obviously death is clear cut, but disability, how do you define that? You could even have a retirement or termination for cause and without cause. What do you do if you have a partner who one day says, hey, I'm just going to quit working, but because I own 50% of this, you still have to keep paying me? If the buy sell doesn't address that, guess what? You're going to court to figure that out. So, it's really thinking through those issues of human behavior where your business partner you trust, but you don't have it clearly mapped out. Sometimes trust and outcomes aren't worth coloring in between the lines. It's better to map this out in advance.
You brought up the most important part about buy sells, and it's the not easy stuff, right? Disability can get complex, but kind of can be more clear cut. Obviously, death is very clear cut, but those nuances that happen in partnerships, right?
Mm-hmm.
People change as things go. We all are changing and adapting and growing into our own self. But you add now zeros to that, you add age to that, you add life experiences, and I think there's a lot of opportunities there that people don't think could happen, could
Agreed.
pop up.
Yeah.
I don't want to work, and you're still going to make the business run and operate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you know what? And some of these I'll see is I want my spouse, I want someone else involved even more heavily, right?
Yep.
Or I want to leave it to this person, even though that even the typical buy sell typically doesn't have that. Some I've seen where the partners are like, yeah, we'll just leave it to our estate. It's fine. They'll
Yeah.
take care of it and run it. One of them doesn't like the other spouse. One of them doesn't like the other's child. All the plethora of things. So it's very important that everyone listening, like, you actually ask all those questions.
Mm-hmm.
You either have an attorney ask those questions, you just walk through it with your business partner, planner like me, or Griffin coach like you guys. Like, doing that is so important because those questions you won't think of because you're excited.
Oh,
You're getting your business going. You're thinking about all the optimism and all those good
yeah. Mm-hmm.
things. And it's our job to come in and be like, great, love that. What if, what if, what if, what if?
Yeah. And value and liquidity are two other huge issues that, that, hey, you and your partner may agree, oh, yeah, we're going to give each other a sweetheart deal, but your estate may not agree. Your spouse may not agree to that. You're going to end up fighting. Or you do this when the business is young and you think it's worth 500,000. Then one of you dies when it's worth 100 million. If you've never updated that value, you're in a bad situation. If the value is updated and you don't have the liquidity to buy out a partner, that's its own issue too. You're hamstringing the business then.
Absolutely. And then the business fails and no one wins. So that's not a great thing either. All right. Where do you see the biggest failures in some real cases you've dealt with when people are either doing a succession planning or doing their estate planning? What are some of the biggest failures you've seen?
I think some of the biggest failures are a failure to appreciate the assets and the dynamics of the family. We're talking about business interests. So again, we get that. Are you active in the business versus are you sitting back and waiting for a paycheck? While both owners are there, they're willing to put in sweat equity and crank all the profits back into the business. Well, once one of you is gone, that dynamic changes if there's not a buyout. If you want this to pass on as a legacy asset to your heirs, well, guess what? They're going to want to see some return from the business. And if they're not, they're going to want to come and blow things up. So keeping that in mind is very important. That oftentimes an estate planning is really a projection of the way you would do things, whereas you fail to appreciate how others might do things and how they might respond. So beyond that too, I think one of the biggest failures is just not doing the heavy lifting. Like if you have a business, where are the accounts? Who co-signs? How can you access the vital information? What lives in your head that you know and can quickly access to do your job day to day and run the business that someone stepping into your shoes is absolutely not going to have and is going to take hours to piece together on their own, assuming they even can.
I agree to those. What are so now everyone's listening going, oh boy, I got a lot to think about. I'm feeling a certain way, right? Like with that anxiety, which is a good thing, by the way, people.
Yep.
But what are some, I guess, practical things that people can think about and go, okay, now I need to get going, right? I need to start now. What would be that like first step or two steps that they need to do now that they're listening?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is, yeah, you can visit a professional to get the documents done, but it helps to think a little bit in advance about what you actually want to do. Oftentimes, I'll have clients come in and say, okay, we want estate planning. Okay, great. Have you given any thought to what your estate plan looks like or who will benefit and who's in charge of carrying out your instructions? And the answer is often no. What do your other clients do? And it's funny because, this is something that you can truly own. But a lot of people passively participate and say, okay, it's up to my professionals and advisors to make those decisions for me or to make suggestions that really then end up passing as decisions. And ultimately, this is something for you to be proud of, your legacy. And, for better or worse, it's something where I think mindset is the most important starting point, if anything. It's not something you have to do, it's something you get to do. And I think a lot of people just don't act because they don't think they deserve that good of a legacy, which I'm here to tell you today, you're wrong. You deserve to leave a great memory of your time on earth. And even if you want to do that, that legacy is eroded by your failure to do the work now. So even if it means eating the elephant one bite at a time, that means, hey, doing little steps now aggregates and is better over time than just waiting and trying to maybe get motivated to do everything in one swoop and then forgetting it for 20 years and never touching it again. And again, as we mentioned at the beginning, having that be probably as bad in some cases as having done nothing to begin with.
Right. The point you just made about like the mindset and the emotions behind leaving your legacy, something that we hear about all the time is one, cost, duh, that comes up all the time, and two, saying I don't even have enough assets or anything to have a legacy. What do you say to that? I got some thoughts on that, but what do you say to that when people say one of those two things?
Well, I mean, no matter how simple you think your situation is, you rarely leave a simple outcome for your heirs. And I've really started to spend a lot of time on, even if you have a couple major assets, there's things that you can shore up given your time on earth right now that are going to make things really easy. So just because you think your situation is simple, because you have the head knowledge to step in at a moment's notice and settle everything, that doesn't mean somebody stepping into your shoes would think the same. So the more advanced work you can do now to say, okay, I think my situation is simple. Can I give that simplicity to somebody else? The better off you're going to be. So really, that's how I've started to reframe estate planning. Is that, yeah, if just because you think it's simple doesn't mean somebody can step into your shoes to do that, but you can make it simple for them. And my tagline has become "Death is never easy, but you can make it easier."
I love that. Love that tagline because it's not easy. Been through it with my mother and my grandmother recently, and it's like there are so many moving parts, even though we had plans put in place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Still so much that needs to be done, both physically but also emotionally, because you're grieving,
Yep.
right? Like that's the part. Me as the one who is dying, I don't think about it all the time. Is like, yeah, I think
Yep.
it's simple, but then you add in the stress, the anxiety, the grieving, and things get complicated pretty quick.
Agreed.
Pretty quick. Based upon your knowledge of everything that's moving parts of this year, is there anything people need to prioritize or think about changing prior to December 31st of this year?
Well, I think the good news is we've gotten a reprieve from the tax side. So if you are in that high net worth strata where you're worried about making lifetime gifts and trying to shore those up before year end, you have a little bit more wiggle room now. Now we have a permanent estate tax exemption that's going to go up to 15 million in 2026 and is going to continue to be indexed for inflation from then on. And most importantly, there's no looming sunset where it's guaranteed under law to go down by one half or something at some point in the future, like we thought was going to happen at the end of this year. So we no longer have that urgency. So now you can be a little bit more intentional about planning without letting the tax tail wag the dog. So I think there's still compelling reasons to do good planning now. Obviously, the planning for death is vital. Making sure you have documents that address what's going to happen at your passing, and even creating a plan that you can easily update in the future. And we talked about wills. A lot of people now use revocable living trust. So even if you have a will, maybe a good idea to pivot to that type of plan, because that witnessing requirement and everything I talked about in most states, you don't run into that with your revocable living trust. It's much easier to change its terms or even completely replace the instrument, keeping the same trust name, even maybe with just a notary signature. So it creates a little bit more flexibility in your planning moving forward. And a vital component of any estate plan, I always like to say we're answering two questions: who and how. But who is at the center of that. How means nothing without addressing who. So I think it's important to revisit, maybe even annually, the people you name to different roles in your documents. You've got executors under your will, but you also have trustees under a revocable living trust. You have agents or attorneys in fact under powers of attorney to make decisions for you. Pulling those out and figuring out who they are and giving them a second look and saying, hey, is this person still suitable? I think it's vitally important, because oftentimes we'll have a friend from long ago we've named and we've since had a falling out with them. We don't like them anymore. They're posting some goofy stuff online and we don't trust them to handle our family's money anymore. So, really thinking through those types of relationships, I think, is important, and then making the right updates to your documents to change those roles around as needed.
Yeah, and he dove right into the actionable steps. So I'm gonna steal that and say the first actionable step is to review your documents, review who's involved, like you had said, between power of attorneys, executors, trustees, you name it. And another step there is not only to review who they are, review it with them so they know their role. I've seen it a lot where they don't remember their role. They didn't remember that they were going to be that person, right? Especially if you did this 10 years ago or 5 years ago, or you're young. Some of us don't know what that role entails. I would take it a step further too and educate them on what it means, right? Some people
Yep.
just say, I'll do it. I'll take care of you no matter what. But they don't know what it means to be a trustee or an executor.
Mm-hmm.
And those roles are not easy.
Nope.
And in some states, let me back up. I'll let you answer this, but I believe in some states they're required to be paid too to be in those positions between some estates. And if you don't tell them that, you don't tell your family that, there's going to be another rift there as well.
Exactly. And I think the documents we've talked about so far are ones you need to lean on an attorney to do, things like wills and trusts and powers of attorney. For the most part, those are going to be directions to another attorney or a judge or a court. But there's a lot you can do in terms of interpersonal communication and making your wishes known. For example, instruction manuals. And if you really want to deepen that relationship with your attorney or an advisor, it's a matter of, okay, I've done the work here to get the base documents in place. I want to take things to the next level now. So what can we do here to make sure there's no question about what somebody's authority is or what they need to do or the time frame or where the skeletons lie so they can jump in and do the job instantly without delay?
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say business owners must review, right? We just talked about individuals a little bit, but what should business owners review right now, and what should be their first step once they've done the review?
I think really business owners, it helps not only with your buy sell, but if it's separate, your company agreement, your partnership agreement, to pull those out every year and just give them a fresh look. And I know it's not light reading. It's not fun to do. So we live in an age where any attorney should be competent to provide you a summary of what that says. Really the drafting attorney should have done that up front. And if they haven't, maybe ask, hey, are you willing to do this? And, for better or worse, a lot of them can run it through an AI search engine nowadays, if we're being real, and then, update things, supposedly as they should. But I'd say making sure you are comfortable with the current governance structure. I think with business owners too, compliance becomes a big thing, that depending on your form of business and the state you're operating in, you have Secretary of State filings, but you also have meeting minutes and things of that nature that might be required under law, making sure those are up to date and part of your corporate file. And organization, I think, is important for any business owner, that, in terms of all these governing documents we've talked about, perhaps the simplest question is, do you know where all of them are? We talked about where your will is located, but is there a central file for a business owner or the secretary of a business to pull out everything, be able to provide it at a moment's notice? Often the answer is no. So sometimes it's just a matter of, okay, we're going to get our stuff together this year and focus on making sure we have a comprehensive guide of every document that affects how we run our business and govern it, and make sure it's in the same place, whether it's in paper or stored digitally or both. So anybody, whether it's us, a partner, an advisor, or somebody after our passing, can look under the hood and know exactly what's going on.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And that would probably be the best next step for everyone. Just first get organized and put it all together. Then review it, right? And that it's going to take time. Don't get me wrong. We all go through these as well. Like, it takes time to find it. It takes time to remember where to put it, and then to write it down to be like, okay, this is where all our stuff is. So all of you listening, that's a very good step. Just get it organized, put it together. Then the next step, go on and to review it. Griffin, I appreciate you. And for those, we're going to leave a little teaser, because the next episode that he is on, that comes out in December, has something really, really amazing and interesting coming out that he's been working on. So fun teaser means you have to come back to get to the next episode. But I appreciate everything that you do, both for our industry and for bigger ones like that. So thank you again. And we look forward to the next one.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, everyone.
The preceding program was sponsored by Black Mammoth. Any awards, rankings, or recognition by unaffiliated third parties or publications are in no way indicative of the advisor's future performance or any individual client's investment success. No award, ranking, or recognition should be construed as a current or past endorsement of Black Mammoth. Information regarding specific awards, rankings, or recognitions is available on the Black Mammoth website, www.blackmammoth.com. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. Investment strategies such as asset allocation, diversification, or rebalancing do not assure or guarantee better performance and cannot eliminate the risk of investment losses. There are no guarantees that a portfolio employing these or any other strategy will outperform a portfolio that does not engage in such strategies. This broadcast should not be construed by any client or prospective client as a solicitation to affect or attempt to affect transactions and securities, or the rendering of personalized investment advice due to various factors including changing market conditions. The information discussed in this broadcast may no longer be reflective of current positions or recommendations. While information presented is believed to be factual and up-to-date, Black Mammoth do not guarantee its accuracy, and it should not be regarded as a complete analysis of the subjects discussed. The tax and estate planning information discussed is general in nature and is provided for informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal or tax advice. Listeners should consult an attorney or tax professional regarding their specific legal or tax situation. Past performance is not indicative of future results.